that skull behind you. Is that a pronghorn skull?
That is, yeah. Yep.
Right,
Very
wow.
cool.
Close enough, right?
Close
enough. Jason, thanks for joining us today, man. Really appreciate it. You're a fellow podcaster. We were talking a bit about that before we started. What's your podcast called? Beyond the
Wild.
Beyond the Wild. That's right. Yep. For some reason I thought Beyond the Lens. No, Beyond the Wild. I was literally listening to an episode today, so go check that out. We'll talk about more about that in this episode. But how can we make photography fun again, man? I feel like that's a hot issue right now in today's photography community. I feel like a lot of people have kind of lost their way.
Right.
And maybe this deserves an entire episode. Maybe Aaron, we can do that together. But while we're on the topic, how can we make it fun again? Jason, what do you think?
Well, that's a really good question. You know, I've gone through dips and that throughout my time that I've been doing photography, and asked myself that very same question. I mean, what is the reason I do this? And sometimes you get caught up in, am I trying to grow a social media account? Am I trying to grow an Instagram? Do I want a big following there? And then you ask yourself, well, what does that do for me? I've had lots of folks reach out to me and ask me that question, and I mean, I've got a fairly large following, not anymore in today's standards, but back before Reels really took off, I have a fairly reasonable following, around 65,000 followers. Mm-hmm. And I've always told people, listen, those number of followers have never equated to sales, right? Or prints sold, or, if I get more and more followers, I don't necessarily get more and more sales, right? So as a content creator or a photographer, to me, it's like, what are you doing? Are you doing this because you're trying to make a living with it? Are you doing it because you get that adrenaline rush from the likes? Are you doing it because you want to get the attention of some other, potential job out there through content creation? What is your why, right? I mean, you kind of mentioned that before we started a little bit, but for me, what I keep coming back to and landing on, I mean, yeah, all of us want to make a little bit of money with our photography if we can, for sure. I think we've come to accept the fact that to be just a wildlife photographer is almost impossible nowadays. So you're going to have to really, if you're going to do that and make a living with your camera, so to speak, you're going to have to diversify yourself quite a bit. Am I going to do weddings in the off season? Am I going to do senior photos? Am I going to do family portraits? Am I going to do all this other stuff? And, wildlife's my passion, and I get to go do that when I can, and I still make a little money with that, Or, a lot of folks are offering, you mentioned doing trips, doing photography tours and things of that nature, right? Mm-hmm. You're seeing a lot of the pros, if you will, starting to offer quite a few of those options. So for me, what keeps it fun is not letting it become a job, not letting it become that daily grind where I have to go out and create content, or I have to go shoot this because somebody wants me to. And it's about remembering that the reason I got into photography is because it's how I clear my head. It's how I ground myself. It's how I spend time in nature, quiet my head, get away from the grind, all the stresses that we all feel in day-to-day life, Mm-hmm. So for me, it's a good health check every now and then to say, okay, why am I doing this? That's why. Let's remember that. Don't get too worked up if you don't get the image that you wanted on this trip or whatever, just let's take it for what it is, and the fact that I'm blessed and fortunate to be able to get out and do this, so.
Yeah. I mean, in your experience, do you feel like people spread themselves thin with too many whys? What I mean by that is they're trying to have it be meditative. They're trying to have it be their full-time income. They're trying to have it be their passion project. Do you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're in the space. I mean, you talk to people, I'm just curious what you think about that.
Right. Yeah, that's a really good point. I think that's probably part of it. That would make a lot of sense. I have a really good friend. I want to mention names, but he's a young photographer. He is so driven, and I ask him all the time, what are you hoping to get from this? He's got a couple projects in the irons in the fire that he's working on, and he gets frustrated, right? Because he's not getting recognized, if you will, by the reels that he puts up and some of the photography he puts up, which it's all really good content. Mm-hmm. But it's like I keep asking, well, if you're doing this because you want likes, then you're doing it for the wrong reason. If you're doing it because it's a pet project that you want to do, and you're hoping that when the project's done that you'll get somebody's attention and be able to maybe publish it or something, then just keep doing you. The guys that I've seen that have been super successful, that is long lasting, are the guys that do something, that have a pet project, like Jake Davis, for example. If you don't know him, Revealed in Nature, incredible videographer and photographer. And he's been, he goes out there and he does this pet project. It ends up getting, some footage in a series for BBC Wild, or I can't remember if it was Disney or BBC Wild, but they bought his footage, and it just kind of launched his career, right? So there's ways to approach things and reasons to do them, and I think it's just all about making sure that you have a good understanding of what you're doing and why you're doing it, and then don't spread yourself too thin. Don't worry about the likes. Don't worry about the other stuff that could, become part of this. Don't worry about my reel didn't go viral or whatever. You know what I mean? Just do you, and be happy with that.
What's your protocol when you're not having fun out in the field, or, photography's dragging you down? I mean, I'm going to make an assumption that whether even it's 0.001% of the time, sometimes photography isn't fun. So I'm curious, to prevent from something you enjoy so much turning into a life stressor or something negative. What do you do? Do you step away? Do you dig in more? Do you take time off your phone? What's it for you?
Ooh, that's a good one. I think for me, it's, I ask myself that why. Like, why am I doing this? There's plenty of times in the field where, as wildlife photographers, we might be camped on an animal, for example, waiting for some behavior to happen. And I've had multiple times where you're sitting in the rain or whatever it might be, and it gets boring and it gets tiresome, and you don't even know for sure if that behavior is going to happen, right? Mm-hmm. I've spent lots of hours sitting on, a carcass of an animal with predators that have been hitting it, looking for an opportunity. I've spent lots of time in the field just going like, what am I doing here? Right? I could be home. I could be hanging out with my kids. I could be, spend time with my wife, whatever it is. And so I think, again, it's about what are you trying to accomplish? And when you get in those situations, I think sometimes you do just have to say, okay, look, I'm done. I'm going to leave the carcass. I'm going to walk away from this opportunity. If it unfolds, great, good for everybody else that's stuck around, but my head's not where it needs to be. I'm going to step away and walk away. And I've noticed too that with social media, I think it's the more and more I do the social. If anybody that follows me listens to this, I do not post as near as often as I used to. I might post once a week, and I've gotten, I've built some bad habits as far as not posting it. If you want to quote unquote grow your page, my focus has gone away.
Mental health.
Right. No, exactly. Yeah. That's exactly what I was going to say. I've gone away from worrying so much about trying to grow my account and just continue to share what I love and the passion for doing it. And it's, it grows a little bit here and there, but it's nothing crazy, and that's fine. I'm okay with that. That's not my goal. My goal is not to create a bigger platform. My goal is to continue to do what I'm doing and share what I do and my passion with others. And if people find it and they like it, they'll follow and they'll do their thing. If they don't, that's okay too, So sometimes it's nice to take those breaks from social media and just I've gone, 2-3 weeks at a time where I just don't even look. I don't even go on Instagram. Don't look at Facebook. I don't look at Instagram. I don't look at TikTok. Just go away from it and just forget about it for a while. And every time I come back, I feel refreshed and I feel like, okay, I can go back to posting some stuff and I feel better about everything.
So you don't feel like you need to continually grow your numbers online to continue to push the bar with your photography career?
No, and this is where it becomes a little bit of a double-edged sword, right? Let's be real. Instagram, TikTok, even Facebook for specific types of accounts and reach are very good platforms that we're crazy if we're not using them to help market, right? It's free marketing in a lot of ways. So if you're going to be a professional, I think you have to use it to some degree to help yourself with marketing and so on. But I think it's really about balancing that and what is your strategy for marketing with Instagram and TikTok or whatever it might be, right? You'll never see me marketing much with TikTok. I'm just not the type of Reels. I'm not that person. I'm not the guy that can go out and video myself in the field and think about, well, I need to get this B-roll and I need to do this and I need to talk about this. And, I go out and I do the shoot and I enjoy myself at the end of the day. But man, it'd be cool if I had a little video I could share about what happened today instead of just throwing some pictures up. But I also know I'm not the guy that's going to think about that and do the work it takes to have that, the content to be able to post.
Right. So, and that's where teams come in, right? We're having a teammate or building a brand or, you fill in the gaps with people who want to do those things and who are good at them, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a really good point. if we can get out in the field with our friends, Ron and I talk about it, Ron Hayes, when we're doing podcast stuff, and it'd be nice we're going to do more of this, like, mic ourselves up while we're in the field, because we have some of the funniest little conversations and little things that are said, and, things that are done that just happen in the moment that we just don't capture. And it's just crazy. It's like, we're out there, we're doing it. We can mic up and just capture that audio. And if it's nothing happened that day, great. You just delete and move on. But when you catch those little cool moments, those would be cool to share with folks. And maybe that gives us an opportunity to start to create more of the, the Reels type content, and that to help continue to grow, like our podcast page and other stuff too, So
right. I think what you're talking about is content naturally happening. It's naturally created by something you're enjoying doing that you would do anyways, versus the other approach, which is going out and doing something with an intention, with a script, with something in mind. And I think both ways are valid. I think you just have to it plays to your personality, which you want to do. It doesn't have to be either or, right? I mean, you can have a blend of that. Sometimes Aaron has a great idea, and sometimes things come naturally just for, with what we're doing or what's being said.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a key too. Sorry, go ahead, Aaron.
I was just going to say it's a tough balance, especially if people have like a day job or family, kids. Then you want to spread out and do a podcast. Then who's editing the podcast? Then you want to do video. Who's editing the video? Then you at the end of the week, you're like, I have 20 extra minutes, and where was my passion? Oh, I used to spend all this time doing photography. Now I'm doing all the stuff around photography, but not doing the photography. And that's something I'm struggling with right now too, is finding that balance and the desire to actually go out with the little bit of extra time that you do have, because you've maybe spread yourself thin through social media. Like, let's make sure the YouTube's up to date, upload this, upload that, find the clips. Yeah. You're telling me you're going to record out in the field. And I'm like, oh, I have so many of those great ideas, but then it turns into, wait, now who's got to go through the 3 hours that we were sitting over a carcass where there's that 1 5-minute clip somewhere in the middle, and someone's got to find it, then pull it out, then stitch it together. Yep. And it's those things, like, you really have to be super passionate about what you're doing. Otherwise it's like, it just burns away at you, because there's just so many avenues to be like, whew.
Well, and you guys all know, right? We see the folks that do it well. I mean, there's guys that it's obvious their passion. They love it. They love doing that stuff in the field, and they're good at it, And the Instagram and the TikTok accounts are, the platforms are, recognizing that, right? They're rewarding them for that, right?
Yeah.
It's hard for somebody that's just a photo guy, quote unquote, that doesn't have that passion for the video. And every time I think about video, I think it's cool. I see the stuff that people are doing. It's like, that's really neat. I like it, but I have zero desire to be the person creating it. You know what I mean? So I love what you're saying. It's like, stay in your lane, do what you do well. And I think everything works out. You do have to play the games with the platforms. There's no question, but that's what, Seth said, bring somebody in onto the team that has that passion and can help cover that gap, if you will, so.
Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah. I think there's this swinging pendulum of, like, you start with your passion, you build your passion, you're doing all the work. Seth and I and our good friend Taryn, but mainly Seth and I are a 2-man team doing all the stuff that anyone ever sees. Right. And that pendulum gets tough to continue that passion. Hopefully you build it and you withstand so long that then you can add team members, you can add people that can take away some of the nitty gritty, so you can go back to the passion and then just really be a well-oiled machine of doing what you want to be doing, and having people help you, people believe in the company, the brand, whatever it may be. It is tricky to get to that point. I think, Seth, we're right at that peak of, like, wow, we're burning oil here. Just trying to get everything done that we want to get done. And it's a lot between planning trip. You're in a similar boat, planning trips. What content do we have to put out? We have to put out a podcast. We promised every week. I guess canceled. Now what? Like, all that little stuff that, it all started, I feel your
pain for sure. Yeah.
It all started with, like, oh, that's a cool kingfisher, and I'm going to watch it for 3 hours. Like, it all started there. And it's just an interesting road. It's fun. It's a puzzle. at
Yeah.
all times.
Well, but it's always a challenge, like you said.
Yeah.
You're burning the candle at both ends. You got to you got to be careful not to burn out, because then you lose all of it. You know what I mean? It's almost like you just you just throw your hands there and you just walk away. And I've seen guys and gals walk away from it. They just don't do it anymore. And I think it's because there's probably multiple reasons, right? But
Yeah.
some of the things that are red flags to me is when you get too hung up on the likes, and you're too worried about the algorithm, and you're too worried about well, this time I'm shadow banned and blah, blah. I mean, I hear it all the time. You see it all the time, and I don't worry about that stuff. Hey, I've got photos that with that many followers where I've got a couple hundred likes. Oh, well, who cares? I don't care. I liked it. I put it up, and it didn't get the traction with the algorithm. Oh, well, that just has to be your attitude about the social media side of things. And I personally believe, from what I've seen, a lot of the burnout comes from people that are too worried about those social media likes and the algorithm, and trying to grow a large following on Instagram or whatever it might be. And again, I ask myself, why? What's the point of growing a large following on Instagram or social media, unless it's to market yourself and to try to get in front of specific accounts or people or whatever. So
Yeah,
Right.
and a couple episodes ago, Seth and I talked about Instagram actually set up a call. I'm sure they did it to millions of people, but they set up a call about best practices and whatnot. It was pretty standard. It wasn't anything super specific towards me, but probably just their outreach and trying to shift people in certain directions. Anyways, what she said on the call, and I could be slightly off, but essentially, Seth, maybe you remember better, but 5 to 7 posts a week, and preferably 5 reels a week, and a couple extra things. So as soon as she said that, my immediate thought was, okay, well, that's essentially a full-time job for the kind of content that I want to create and put out there. To get 5 to 7 would be an absolutely full-time job.
Right.
Now, then what is the payoff? Just follows and likes? Am I going to get immediate business? Am I going to be able to quit my day job? I don't think so. I don't think that happens for a very long time. And I think the time, I just do an efficiency calculation of I could do 5 to 7 posts, or I could reach out to 5 to 7 companies a week for a fraction of the time,
right,
and create opportunities for myself versus trying to win this game that I don't think has an ending. I really don't think there's an end point. That's the brilliant part of it. You have 100,000. Oh, I want 1 million. You have 1 million. Oh, I want 3 million. Who has the most million? I want to beat that. It just never can end. And then at the end of the day, I just feel like it's so easy to be like, what the hell did I just do for 10 years? Didn't do anything. I just got a following. Right. Now what? It's a very interesting skill to create a following, but then what?
Right.
Speaking of the burnout, you mentioned you've seen some people kind of burn and fade away.
Right.
You mentioned some red flags. What else have you noticed? Have you kind of seen those burnouts happen in slow motion from the sidelines? I mean, what do you think, in your opinion, can some people look out for? I mean, have you ever burnt out, hit the wall?
So, I've went through some, I would call creative funks, if you will, with my editing and things like that. I've never gotten tired of going out in the field and, spending time in the wild. Never. I mean, that I just don't ever see that happening, because that's my happy place. That's where I want to be.
Right. So you're where you're supposed to be.
Right. Right. But for the burnout side, on the creative side, on the editing, like I mentioned, I've definitely hit some brick walls multiple times in my career. There's been times where I try to, go with a different style of editing or something, and I just find that that's not going to work, But then it's I'm back to the same old, and it's how do I be creative? How do I create something new? How do I not have the exact same deer image that everybody else is posting from Colorado? You know what I mean? Just how do you separate yourself and set yourself apart, right? And it's harder nowadays because the tools that they're giving us are amazing. But they're also so powerful that it makes it very, very easy for anybody to quote unquote copy your style or to copy the way you edit. It's taking the skill away from editing and making it very cut and paste and cookie cutter. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, there's still opportunities there for sure. And I don't think there's any secrets to editing, honestly. It's just, trying to create a style and create something unique. So now it's about composition. Now it's about what the animal's doing, the type of animal, the behavior that it's doing, trying to separate and create unique unique style of image that nobody's seen yet. I mean, and then that's difficult, right? I mean, you look at wildlife on Instagram, and if you just hashtag wildlife and look at the millions of hashtags that have been out there for wildlife. I mean, it's incredible. There are so many people out there doing it, and which is awesome. But again, if you think you're going to make a living with wildlife photography, it's almost like, hey, I'm over here, poo-pooing on your dream if that's your dream. But I think you can do it, but you got to be real creative, and you're going to have to probably do more video than just photography. You have to probably be able to do both. And you're going to probably have to set yourself apart in some way to even get the attention of the people that can give you the type of opportunities that you could make a living. And then you're also going to have to diversify. You know what I mean? But yeah, the burnout, I've seen both, to be honest with you, Seth. Mm-hmm. I mean, I've seen quick burnout where it's just super, somebody buys a new camera and they got this brand new lens and camera and they think they've got everything they got, and they get frustrated really fast because they're not getting the likes and the follows real quick. And all of a sudden they just say, screw it. I'm done. And I've seen that happen with people, and I've seen the slow burn too, where, you get folks that kind of ebb and flow, right? They come and they go, they come and they go, they come and they go, which I give credit to those folks because at least they're still continuing the passion. They're just probably not putting it out on social media as much as they were before, but yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to just ask a question. It's an opinion question. I don't think it's statistical, but what percent of photographers, because of the rise of social media and how popular it is, and Seth and I kind of sometimes reference it as somewhat of a drug, the likes, the
absolutely,
So, what percent of photographers, and we can even niche it down to wildlife photographers because that's seemingly what we all tend to put ourselves as first. What percent of wildlife photographers are photographers because of that, the likes and the follows, the dopamine rush? They figured out a tool.
All genres too, though, right? Like,
sure, all genres. They figure out a tool. Oh, this camera can get me more, let's call it attention or likes or what have you, better than my phone did. And then, this new lens can do it. Take away, and I think, Seth, maybe I'm just posing this in a different way. Take away social media. What percent of photographers drop off the face of the earth?
Yeah. Ooh, that's a really good question. I don't know if I've thought much about that, to be honest. I think it's got to be less though. I think it's significant. I think the number would shock us all. I mean, because you can see folks that they have some accounts out there that are really cool, and they take some amazing images, and they're just iPhone photographers, right? Mm-hmm. Or they're just doing nothing but video with iPhone or photography with iPhone, and they can create some amazing stuff, right? So the technology has gone so far that everybody has a camera and a video camera in their pocket nowadays, right? And it's a camera that can do some pretty amazing things. So the social media side of it really just adds fuel to that, like, hey, I can share this. Like you said, you get the likes. And I'm going to be very, very honest with you guys. I was caught up in that at first too. There's no question. I mean, I don't think anybody can be honest about there wasn't little bit of a dopamine rush when you see those likes and you see that you're starting to get more followers and you see that your account's growing, you see that you're getting that attention. Regardless of what that led to as far as sales or growth or an opportunity for business, you're kidding yourself if you don't think that that's giving you some kind of a rush. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're kidding yourself. Don't lie to yourself. You know what I mean?
I agree. I think the only ones that are immune to that, and we've had them on the shows, are the people that went to school or got into photography business right away and became successful with their business of photography, whether it's weddings or what have you. It's kind of like, I don't need social media is like, that's wasting my time from actually making money and doing things towards my business. Right. Those are the only ones that seem immune to the, I want to grow. I want to, they say reels. Okay. I'll do reels. Right. It's like, I'll post when I can, or I'll have the intern do it. But, I've got, 3 clients I got to edit for.
That's so interesting. I wonder the correlation between how we could even study this, the correlation between people who give a shit about the numbers versus how successful, in air quotes, they're doing, like how successful their business is or what's going on. I wonder if it's negatively correlated.
Take a sample size of photographers, anyone that shoots photos, and then ask how many followers you have and how much money you've made with photography. Not that it's all about money necessarily, but it'd be an
Right.
interesting correlation of, yes, I am a photographer. Yes, I made this much money and I have this many followers.
I thought you were
Right.
going to say, yes, I'm a photographer and I took this photo.
We should start that trend up again, everyone.
Yeah.
The three of us do it tomorrow.
You
Yeah,
know,
let's do it.
you know that I think also, just while we're on the topic of burnout, from like what I've seen, I feel like burnout is the repetitive damage of being consistently disappointed by not hitting unrealistic expectations.
Yeah. I like
Do you
that
know what I mean?
definition.
Just like
I do.
continuously being disappointed because your expectations are ridiculously high.
Yeah, I think that's a good definition, and I think that sums up a lot of what you see out there. And it's funny you mentioned the correlation with the photographers that do really well. What I've seen, right, if you go and follow some of those accounts or look at some of those accounts of the big name photographers, part of those folks are big name photographers, and so they have the following. If that makes sense. I mean, they don't necessarily do much with their social media. They don't manage it necessarily. They probably have somebody that's doing it for them, but they have a name, like Paul Nicklin,
Paul
for
Nicklin
example,
is what I was thinking. Yeah.
right? I mean, they're going to have a large following, just period. Then there's other photographers. I know a Nat Geo photographer that I follow, and he's an amazing photographer, and he's got a large following. He's probably less well known, but he does great stuff. But he also is super funny, and he plays on that with his social
Right.
media account. So he does a good job with his social media as well. So he has a large following, I think, more because of what he does with that than he does because he's so well known. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so, and I think he just uses it as a kind of a release. He doesn't care. He doesn't care about the followers, the likes, whatever. And so I think, it's interesting. But I bet you're right. I bet that correlation exists. I bet that it's the ones that are more well known, probably don't. They're the ones that actually make money. They might have a large following, but it might just because they're well known.
Right. Maybe there'd be a caveat where you take famous out
There you go.
and,
Right.
and just see kind of the
That'd be
average.
that'd be a fun study to do. That would be really interesting.
Right?
Yeah, it would be.
Let's rewind. When you were talking about, being okay with, sometimes having those thoughts of you've been out in the field for 4 hours, you're on a carcass, you're a wildlife photographer.
Yep.
And, but I'm sure photographers of all, because we have listeners of all genres. And I want to remind people the concepts that we talk about aren't just specific to the guests we have on. It's so applicable across all fields. But you mentioned in your specific example, sometimes you have that thought of, what am I doing here? I could be at home. I could be spending time with my wife, etc. And you also mentioned, though, that you're okay walking away. Like, okay, I'm not in the right headspace. I've had enough. I'm okay walking away. I feel like, myself included in the past, and maybe still sometimes presently, and a lot of people listening, whatever genre of photography you're in, when you feel like you need to walk away or take a step back, there's this guilt or there's this shame that you're not 100% committed. Have you ever felt that? Does that make sense? Do you think,
yeah.
How can people deal with that?
Oh yeah. And I mean, I can give you examples, but one that comes to mind is, not the specific scenario, but sitting there with a bunch of buddies, and there's this potential thing that's going to unfold, and it's unreal. I mean, it's going to be, if it unfolds, it's unreal. And sometimes you got to be willing to walk away and say, hey, you guys, it's yours. If it unfolds, great, but you also have to be like, am I really okay with that? Because if you're not, then you're just going to be, and it happens, and you're like, dang it. And then you're beating yourself up, for the other side of it. So, I think it's really being honest with yourself. I mean, is it okay to walk away? Yeah, I'm okay if I don't get that. Even if all my buddies that are there get it, I'm happy for them. I'm not going to sit and beat myself up about it, right? So
that's such a broader topic too. Is it okay
really
to walk
is.
away? Is it okay to walk away from photography if I'm not having fun? Is it okay to walk away from this social media strategy I've been implementing for 3 months and I'm just feeling like shit? Like, is it okay to walk away? Is such a heavy concept.
Yeah, and Seth, it has to be okay to walk away to be okay to walk away. Like, if it's your livelihood and you are burnt out at a wedding and you're like, I just want to walk away, that's not going to be a great move. So that's where it gets tricky in terms of some have the privilege of being able to walk away when it's not working out, but some don't, I don't think. And that is, I think that perpetual sort of negative spiral can get you into a really tough burnout situation where you're like, I can't walk away.
Well, then you're a prisoner.
Then I have to, that's where that passion becomes then a payable passion. And then you decide, I'm going to lean completely on this passion, and then you can't take a break. You can't stop working at it, and then it becomes a little bit tricky. There's a different aspect to that.
Yeah, if you don't mind, the thought came to mind real quick, but you're spot on, I think, and that's what makes it hard for folks. I have friends that have tried that, right? They've walked away from their previous job or whatever it was because the photography was their passion, and they wanted to go make a living with it, and they would have kicked themselves if they wouldn't have tried to go make a go of it, right? Some folks went and did it, and they just couldn't make it because the opportunities just weren't there. Some folks went and did it, and they couldn't make it because they realized pretty quickly that what was their passion became a job, and then all of a sudden they weren't having fun. You know what I mean? So I guess the point is before you make that leap, I think it's real important for you to be honest with yourself. We're saying a lot of honesty, right? But I think we kid ourselves a lot,
We do.
So be honest with yourself. Do you really think you can go out and make a living with your camera, and you're going to be satisfied and happy and fulfilled? One example was a good friend of mine who did that, and he's back working in the corporate world again, but he's happier now because his photography is his passion again, and he gets to go to and photograph and video the things he wants to. He's not having to do things for folks to make money on their schedule and things that he could really care less about photographing and videoing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I think it's fair to ask yourself that. I've thought about it myself. We all have heard the Joe Rogan, just go do it, make it happen, be the most successful podcast person in history, and that's easy when you're the guy, you know what I mean? And not digging on or dogging on Joe Rogan. And a lot of folks have taken that advice and been very successful. And there's nothing wrong with that. But you also have to ask yourself, hey, maybe for me, my corporate job, which gives me a lot of time off and pays me really well, and allows me all the time off and the ability to go do this passion, is an okay thing too. If I'm not sitting in a cubicle and stuck in a situation where I dread going to work every day, you know what I mean?
Right.
So I think there's different strokes for different folks, and you just got to know, what's really gonna work for you and your personality.
Yeah, and there's parts of my career that are rewarding in different ways, and then there's parts of passions that are rewarding in different ways, and there's parts of athletics and working out and spending time with family and my dog. Like all those things have their pros and cons. Everything in life, and I personally, my perspective with work and passion is, there's always part of life, whether it's a sport you love, then there's endurance training for it. I hate long distance running, and I was a lacrosse player, so much running back and forth as a midfielder. Just that's the part I didn't like. But in order to enjoy the game the most, I had to do that workout. In order to be able to afford equipment or buy that new lens, the work I do at my day job is something that feeds that. And I look at it as like, this is the hard part of that. And it helps get through the day. It's not like, oh, I wish I could only do that. It's all one thing to me. It's all part of it. And there's ups and downs to all of it. And if you kind of look at it as like that, and you can adjust the scales as you need to, as you move on, but it's all kind of part of it, and it keeps it fresh and fun.
Yep. Well said.
What does the being honest with yourself conversation look like? What questions are we asking ourselves that we can get the most accurate answer, that we can make decisions from?
Yeah. I mean,
I don't expect you to have a one size fits all answer, but I mean, in your experience, what's helped?
Yeah, that's all I can really give you is like, for me, I mean, I can think of, like for me, it's really just about what am I, it's my why again. It goes back to, why am I doing this? And I start asking the question, am I doing this to make a living? No. Am I doing this because I want the likes? And honestly, anymore? No. I used to get caught up in that when like I said, I admitted to that, and I was caught in that trap for sure. But I've matured past that, whatever you want to call it, got to a point where I don't care, whatever. And I've been fortunate to have some success in the photography world for sure. And so, I mean, I'm not, that makes it easier to say, yeah, I don't care. Right. For sure. But let me give you an example more specifically to the creative side. I went through a period where I was, I kind of, if you guys know my history at all, and I won't get too detailed on this, but I got a photo of an elk that was standing broadside on a shadow line bugle, and it's become a pretty well known image of mine. And I got my very first newsstand cover with that photo, and so it checked a lot of boxes for me from a goal standpoint, from a career standpoint, from a recognition standpoint, so on and so forth. And it kind of also set the tone for a style of image that I really liked. And so when I'm out in the field anymore, I'm really looking for that scenario to unfold. I'm looking for that dark background to kind of set out and pop with great crazy light, and playing with shadows and stuff like that. That's kind of become, I guess, maybe what I'm known for, or what I'd really like to try to chase. In that early on in that process, I got so gung-ho about it that I was trying to go through an editing style where I was forcing images that weren't that to become that, right? And it got me into a point where I was getting so frustrated because I mean, it was obvious. These photos were terrible because they were over edited, and I was trying to force something that wasn't there. And so that whole conversation came down to talking to a good friend of mine, Harlan Cooper, who I've mentioned on lots of different scenarios because he's a good mentor and a friend of mine. And, he's the kind of friend that will sit you down and say, "What are you doing? That's garbage, dude. Like,
We
what
need those people.
You do. You need those people. So I am more than grateful for him multiple times through my photography career. If you will, I'll throw a photo in front of him and he'll look and say, and I'm all excited. I'm like, dude, I think I got this. Check this out. He's like, dude, it's garbage. And I'm like, what are you talking? And the nice thing is he doesn't just say it's garbage. Then he'll come back and explain why. What was the miss? What went wrong? Why doesn't it work? And at first I'm always like defensive and like, yeah, you don't know what you're talking about. And the more I sit and stew on it, look at it, think about it, I was like, man, he's right. Gosh dang it, he's right. And but that's how I grow. That's how I learn. Mm-hmm. That's how we become better, right? Mm-hmm. So he was instrumental in like calling me out on some of that. Like, dude, you're over editing crap, man. You just need to stop. You're forcing it, And it was, it took a minute, but I had that come to Jesus meeting with myself, if you will, and said, no, you're right. I need to knock it off. And as soon as I was able to like back out of that, the funk left. I was back on my stride. I realized that I needed, and it's a lesson learned through all my photography, is I don't want to make anything that it's not. Whatever it gives me, it gives me. Creative, I can do some things with it, but it's pretty limited because I try to look for a natural look. And, beyond that, if the photo's there and that situation's there, great, I'll go with it. If it's not, I'm not going to force it. And I'm just learning to be happy with whatever is presented to me, if that makes sense. So there's an example for you of what that process was like for me on a specific scenario. But.
Right. I think what's interesting about this is I always struggle with with feedback, not because I don't like it, but because one of the hardest things about feedback is knowing when to take it or when not to take it.
Yeah.
Right? Just because somebody has suggestions doesn't mean that they're right necessarily, especially with art because it's so subjective. Yep. But what I find interesting about your story, that particular story, is that somewhere inside of you, part of you believed what he was saying was true.
Right.
Otherwise, you wouldn't have come to the realization. Does that make sense? Do you guys agree with that?
Yeah.
Or disagree with that? Feel free to disagree since we're talking about, being,
honest.
being honest and speaking our truths, right?
Right.
Yeah, I think it depends how you look at the person too and who they are and how much you trust them. And sometimes you can look up to people too much and then just take everything they say as gospel.
That's what I'm saying, right?
I've been in that situation where it's like an arbitrary change when you just find yourself like a lemming, like, okay, I'll go put the highlights down. And you're like, wait, why though? Back to the why. Why? Right. Did I overshoot something? Is it too bright here? Is it too much contrast? Like what it is? Yeah, that makes sense. I can see that. It does look a little bit better if it's a more balanced photo. And then if you truly believe that, then great. I think the the bravest or the most confident or the best relationship maybe is where you could say like, hey, I thought about what you said. I tried it. It's just not working for me, but thank you for being honest and giving your opinion. I'm going to stick with it. It's not that I don't value that. I just I'm doing this on purpose. Like I like it that way. I like the highlights lighter to my taste. It's my thing. And he might be like, well, you're wrong and you're an idiot. And you'd be like, well, I think you're an idiot. And they just go back and forth. And then, but
I'm pretty sure you're not friends anymore. Yeah. No.
Right.
No, it's about the relationship and making sure it feels balanced and you trust each other. And Seth and I, we've worked together for a long time now. And I think we even know each other's like defensiveness or if something gets us and we can call each other out on that, and it never comes to blows, but it's just like we know how we function, we know how we work, and we ask each other straight up for not just photos, but like written stuff, emails, like, hey, how's this sound? What would you do here? What do you think about this pitch? Like it's just once you know someone and trust that they're not going to snap at you or belittle you, I think you can have a good relationship. And that goes for yourself too, right? Like we all have that Bobby Knight voice that calls us, pieces of crap and garbage and we suck, that voice in our head that can be super critical. And I think working on that relationship also is really important for our own just peace and success and enjoyment of any of this stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, you nailed that one for sure. And I think that's the other side of that, I mean, obviously this person has become a friend, right? A lifelong friend. I mean, I can't imagine us ever not being friends because we have that relationship, but you're right. And I think sometimes, we talk a lot, you guys have probably talked on the podcast before about, getting a mentor, right? Or, what is a mentor, the value of a mentor? And we just, that's what we're talking about right now, really. And a mentor doesn't have to be some professional. It could just be a friend that's going to give it to you honest. It could be somebody that's not even in the space, that you value their opinion. So there's a lot of ways to kind of consider that. But you're right. It's got to be one where, Harlan, for example, will tell me, listen, you take it or leave it. I don't care. I'm just sharing with you because I care and I'm telling you what I feel and I think. And you know what? I could be wrong, and that's fine too. And if you disagree, then disagree. There's nothing wrong with that, right? So as some advice maybe would be as folks are thinking about a mentor and, that relationship, you nailed it. You got to make sure that it's a two-way respect and that you're not just like you said, the lemming thing, just following because that's what Isaac's doing now. Look at his editing style. Oh, it's so cool. Then all of a sudden everybody's trying to copy Isaac. Well, sometimes it just doesn't work for you because you're not Isaac A, and then you're not necessarily hitting the style that he's hitting. And then sometimes folks see it as just copying, you know what I mean? For an example, right? So, but yeah, I mean, it's a good point. That's a really critical point too, I think. And having more than one person like that is kind of important. So you can throw things at people and get different perspectives instead of just that one. You know what I mean? So,
or you get convergence on an opinion, right? If two or three people are saying the same thing, I think it holds way more weight.
Right. Absolutely. Yep.
You get confirmation, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. The mentor thing is so you're right when you say, it's a heavily asked question or topic on the podcast. I don't know how much we've done a lot of episodes. I don't know how much we've dug into the whole mentor thing. Maybe we do an episode on our opinions on like how to go about acquiring a mentor.
Yeah.
But a lot of people ask that, how do I get a mentor? And I feel like often it's gone about the wrong way. I feel like a lot of the times people think, oh, I'm going to go find some people I look up to and just straight up ask them, hey, like, can you be my mentor? Right. I don't really think it works that way. I would say like for all the people I look up to and who will offer me advice and guidance, it was just kind of a natural friendship or relationship that just kind of grew over time.
Right.
Yep.
And you kind of are there one day and you're like, this person really is a mentor for me. They've offered me a lot of guidance throughout the years. It's never just like hey, be my mentor, please.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I think it's important to say that for people listening who are like, how can I go get a mentor? I mean, just go talk to people, go ask questions and be open to learning, right? And be open to criticism and not get too defensive and stuck in your ways, right? It all goes back to that. How can we deflate that ego, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and you
that's
can be
cool.
duo mentors with each other. Like you can mentor each other just as friends, and grow together and build and push each other and keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And that's the idea versus.
Which I think is you and I, in a sense, man. Like,
Yeah.
you know what you're good at. I know what you're good at. We know each other's weaknesses.
Mm-hmm.
And for example,
zero
like,
for me.
Pardon me?
Zero for me,
Zero,
right?
That's your weakness right
That's
there.
easy.
I'll come to you with something I know that I'm not as strong at.
Yeah.
You know, for example, there's a lot of things that require a lot more life experience, which you can't teach that. And you have a decade on me, right? So how could I possibly know some of the things that you do?
Right. You can't, because I'm so old is what you're saying.
Yeah. That's my backhanded compliment.
Yeah.
That was a very nice little way you slid that in. Was nice.
Yeah.
I'm sly.
Yeah.
No, but for example, Aaron's very good at, getting people to get excited about something, or, Aaron's good at how to revise an email. It also goes back to, I think for people who we talked so much about this episode about being more than just a photographer, and we do that every episode. But for all the people listening who have like big dreams, I mean, we all do, right? We're all kind of entrepreneurial in a sense if we want to make money with our photography. It gets to a point where your dream is so big that you cannot afford to do it alone. It's impossible. You can't do it alone, and you're going to have to find a teammates, employees to kind of build the ship that you've envisioned for years.
Yeah, I agree with that 100% in this industry, and just seeing it just in the short time that I've been here, like there's just no way. There's just no way, I don't think.
I don't think there's any way if like you're trying to continue to grow. And when I say grow, that doesn't necessarily mean quantitatively, but just like grow your business or grow, I don't know how many trips you offer.
Even personally, right? Grow
personally. Right?
Yeah.
Grow as a team.
Yeah, you don't. If you want to be successful, you don't surround yourself with a bunch of losers. You know what I mean? I'm not, not to cut to the chase, right? I mean,
yeah.
And I love what you said. Before the thought leaves my mind, I want to just touch on it because I think it's so big. Is the idea that those mentorships kind of happen naturally.
Mm-hmm.
All of the ones that happen in my life to this point have all been fairly natural, and I think there's two things there, right? I feel like I've tried to be a mentor to up and coming, younger guys and gals that are getting into photography. And the reason I'm doing that is because I felt like people did it for me. And again, it's natural. It's not something where they've asked or anything, right? But if you're humble and you're receptive, people will be willing to help you. If you're not and you act like you know it all and nobody has anything to offer you, you're going to be on your own on an island. I guarantee it.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to learn, if you want to grow and develop, if you think you know it all, good luck. I'll be the first to admit I have so much. So I've been doing photography now consistently, seriously for about 8 years. And I have so much to learn. It's not even funny.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I learn every time. I'm always listening to people. And I had a professor tell me one time early on in my college career, if you have the right attitude, you can learn from everybody that's in front of you, everybody that comes into your life. And sometimes it's what not to do. Sometimes it's how not to be, right? But you can learn from everybody, right? So I think that was good for me early on. I've tried to always be humble and try to always be open to perception and new ideas, and not be that person that thinks they know it all, because those are the last person I want to talk to. Someone acts like they know it all. I mean, if we're all being honest, none of us want to talk to that person.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
and
Amen.
I mean, you saying I have so much to learn instantly for me instills a level of trust.
Yeah.
For me, like just when I said this on our last podcast, it seems like we've talked about this so much because we've done so many podcasts in a row. But on the last episode we were talking about when people say they don't know or they're humble and they say they have things to learn. Those people are generally people you want to go to for advice and generally can tend to be very trustworthy.
Right. Yeah, I found that in my life too, for sure. I was just thinking, like, the people that I go to the most are the ones that are the most humble, the ones that are always willing to tell me that, hey, you're coming to me for this, but I don't know, but hey, let's go figure it out. You know what I mean? Or whatever, and yeah, I think it's important to surround yourself with folks like that. And I'm going to leave it at that because
Yeah,
I'm going to start getting into specific people if I don't. So,
no, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think
Sorry, go ahead, Aaron.
I was just going to say, it's important to surround yourself with not the echo chamber,
Mhm.
not someone that's your exact clone copy. We edit exactly the same. This is how we just go about our lives. We're doing the same reels, or whatever it is. I think you do better with someone, or at least have those people in your lives that there's a Venn diagram. You overlap a little bit. You overlap in maybe a good amount, but you have certain strengths, certain qualities, certain expertise that makes the whole just that much bigger. Like if we had a photography company for product, or we have a drone pilot, we have someone that's great with video, we have someone that can get the photos there. We're not all just trying to go get the best photo. That's not going to create the best package. So surrounding your stuff with people with like different strengths and things you can learn from. Maybe I can learn from the drone pilot, like how to fly a drone. That's cool that he's right in my crew,
Right.
So I think that's important too when you're looking around, is not just finding the person that's like, oh, that guy's just like me, but just has a bigger following. Like
Yeah.
I'm just gonna latch on to that. It's good to have those sort of different contrarian views as well.
Yeah, diversity is good for sure.
Diversity is good.
Yeah.
I think what the similarity that's important though is all having a similar generative drive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, going to that drone pilot in your example, you may not learn how to fly a drone. Maybe that's unimportant for the mission, but maybe you learn something about planning and preparation and that protocol. Maybe you learn something about safety from that drone pilot, just like a general guideline.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Maybe you learn from the PR person at your company how to be a better speaker.
Yep.
Not necessarily the details of the job, but the principles, I guess, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we're so blessed in today's world because we have access to so many wonderful people just by taking a phone out of our pocket. And I think that's a great way to use social media, obviously, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think you become who you surround yourself with. That's the same digitally too. Like, what are you consuming? Not to go too far on a tangent, but surround yourself with good stuff and people who are going to make you better.
Right.
And going back to our conversation about honesty, if if the people you're surrounding yourself with digitally or in the physical world, if they're dragging you down and if they're going to hold you back, and you got to decide, are you okay with that? Or are you going to be regretful?
Yeah.
While we're on this topic, what's the value in sharing experience and knowledge, with an audience in general? You have a podcast. Tell us about that and why you do that. I'm sure part of it is to share knowledge.
Yeah, I mean, it's so funny. It's hard because I have a hard time even just calling myself a professional, to be honest with you. I don't make my living with this, with my passion. I do make money with it. I'm not going to, I do try to make money with it too. Don't get me wrong, but it's not my business. It's not my main focus. It's not where I get my income to support my family. So I even have a hard time calling myself a professional. I mean, where do you draw that line? I don't know, but I just don't feel like I'm a professional.
I think it's
I
subjective.
feel like Mark Raycroft is, for sure. He's on the podcast as well, and he makes his living with it. He's been doing it for a long time, and he continues to make a living as a wildlife photographer, which is pretty amazing in today's world. But yeah, to me, so back to the reason I bring that up is because what do I have to share, right? I feel like I have some experiences that I can share, and that's probably why I do the podcast, is because it's fun to, I'll be honest with you, what's really cool is meeting folks like you, meeting the guests that we have on, getting to talk about my passion. I mean, heck, I could sit and talk about photography for hours, especially with the other people that want to talk about photography. So I think it's cool to get to meet all the different people that we've met. And I've built a network that's incredible as far as opportunities for, photography tours and trips and going out and learning new things, go out and hang out with a landscape photographer because I suck at landscape, and learn from all these different people. To me, it's a little bit selfish. It's not so much about sharing my knowledge. It's more learning and taking in more knowledge. And so I've been fortunate. To be on the Wild and Exposed podcast for, 3.5, 4 years, and then to start this new endeavor with the Beyond the Wild podcast with Ron and Mark. And, we're partnered up with Picture Line, which is the camera store in Salt Lake City, which is awesome. And we're starting a new adventure, but to me, it's kind of selfish. I want to learn as much as I can from everybody I can. That's just, and I'm being sincere about that, so.
Yeah, and that's fair enough. And other people learning, listeners learning is the byproduct. I mean, that's I've said that on this show point blank. I mean, I learn so much every week, and that hopefully the questions Aaron asks and the questions I ask, we learn, and people listening learn, right? And then you go and apply it. Just in case, we have a lot of listeners who listen to the Wild and Exposed podcast, and I'm sure who listen to your new one. Just kind of explain, if people are confused, what happened to that.
Yeah. So it was, everybody has this, like, what happened? There's this, like, is there drama there or whatever, right? And it really wasn't. It was just, I think we all got kind of burned out. We did 5 years of almost every week releasing an episode.
Congratulations.
Wow.
Right. Which you guys know, you're there, you're right, knocking on that door, right? And you've been doing it. It's hard work. It's a lot of work, and you know that. So I think we all kind of got a little burned out, needed a break. A break turned into a little bit longer break. A break turned into conversations about, hey, what are we doing? Are we going to keep this going? We all felt like, hey, if we're going to keep doing this, we've been doing it for basically free for the entire time we were doing it, hoping it would take off. There's a lot of conversations about, hey, at some point you got to make money at this, or it's not, even though it's a passion, it takes a lot of time, and it's taking enough time that it's hard. It's eating into other things that we should be spending doing in our lives.
Yeah.
So we just had that conversation, and I think, Mike decided he wanted to go ahead and go a different route and do he's doing the Truth and Legend podcast now. If you haven't, checked that out, go check it out. He's got a great YouTube channel with like quite a few episodes out now. And him and Brandon Day and Eric, I can't remember his last name, but they're running with that and they're more focused on video stuff. And then, Ron and Mark and I decided to go ahead and, partner with Pictureline and start the podcast back up as from the podcast format. We have a YouTube as well, but really more focused on like photography. We do some video stuff too, because there's a couple of us that do some video here and there, but more focus on the photography stuff. So the nice thing is now the folks that we're doing Wild and Exposed, they actually have 2 outlets for content instead of just the one. And it's all mostly the same folks that were involved throughout the years on that podcast. So we'd love the support, love for you guys to reach out and support us. And, we love interacting with our listeners too, and we ask for questions all the time from them so we can address them on the podcast. And, a lot of our listeners are friends and guests of the podcast too. So we do a lot of that too, where we all can learn, and it's always fun to hear somebody's story. Right. So from a format standpoint, we do a lot of bring a guest on, talk about their photography journey. How do they get into it? What's driving them? What's their why? Where are they at today, and what's their passion? What are projects are they working on? And then we love to do like catch up episodes of times that we spend in the field, and do pro tip episodes, quote unquote pro tips. Mine aren't so pro, but tips and things that we learned that we can apply in the field, or, to our photography and that. So it's a lot of the same stuff you've gotten before, but we're excited about it, and would love the support. So
awesome. Well, we'll link to your new podcast in the episode description for people who are interested in checking that out.
Cool.
Sounds like it's designed for wildlife photographers who are interested at becoming better at photography out in the field, learning through your experiences and your guest experiences. Is that fair?
Yeah, I'd say it's more like outdoor adventure photography, right? So,
Excellent.
We do some landscape, we do a lot of wildlife, but it's more focused on that. So if you're interested in that genre, then that's probably, it's a good fit for you. But, like you guys have all talked, I mean, there's no question. We all the genres, as far as the photography technical aspect, they meld very well. There's a lot of crossover, and so there's a lot of opportunity to learn from everybody out there. So I'm excited to have found your guys' podcast and gonna go dig in. And I love it. I've got 200 something episodes I can go binge over, like all those.
You'll be an
road trips,
old man by the time you're done.
No. I'll get caught up. Trust me. I do a lot of I do a lot of driving in the car. So
oh God, don't go back to episode 1. It's like cringe level 100.
Hey, that's the fun. That's the fun part, right? So
everyone listening after this, go listen to Jason's podcast, and then after you're done doing that, listen to episode 1 of this one, and you'll be like, good God.
Amazing.
That's not even a fair comparison. Listen to this one and then the most recent one, and they'll be very, very similar. So
They are.
Right. So yeah, that's awesome. Well, you mentioned that you have guests on, and they talk about their journey, and you learn stuff through that. We're going to kind of do this ass backwards here. How did you get into wildlife photography?
Oh yeah. So for me, a lot of folks that maybe your listeners will be new to this, but for me, I've shared this story a lot. But I really got into it through hunting. I'm a local resident here in Utah. I grew up hunting with my dad and being in the outdoors, and hunting for us wasn't just about hunting; it was about spending quality time in the field with family and friends. And that passion just carried on for me. It was another way to spend more time out in the field, in the outdoors with family and friends. So that's what started it for me. And my journey is a long story. Well, it's a short story. Buy a good camera. That's all I got to do. Learn very quickly that I got a lot to learn, and here I am today. 10 years later with a lot to learn. So,
Right.
but just keep it that way. To me, it's like as long as photography can be fun and exciting, and every time I do a new type of photography, like night photography or the aurora or whatever, I'm learning something new. And so it's so fun. I mean, there's a guy named Chris Dickinson. If you don't mind, real quick, I plug just
We got time, man. Don't feel like you're in a rush.
Picture Line is doing a Photo X, and it's May 17th and 18th, and they're having folks come in. Keith Ladinsky is the keynote speaker. They're providing some food and everything. It's very reasonably priced. It's an awesome little event that they're doing there to just kind of give back to the community. And one of the guys that's coming is Chris Dickinson. He's a he's a Western photographer. And I'm pumped to meet this guy, right? I've followed him on Instagram for a long time, and he lives locally, but we just never rubbed elbows. And so I'm super pumped to meet him and to bend his ear a little bit, hopefully, if we have some time, and to learn from him about Western photography. And my point is that what do you want to photograph? What do you want to go do? The sky's the limit. I mean, you can be a photographer that can specialize, or you can be a photographer that tries to do all kinds of different stuff, right? So. I feel like I'm the guy that's wanting to become more of a guy that's not specialized and is wanting to learn different styles of photography. So,
very cool.
Right on. Well, I guess the theme of today's episode has been have some damn fun.
Yeah,
we started off having fun. Let's continue to have fun, and let's keep that in the back of our mind. If we're not having fun, reevaluate, step back, make some changes. Take a break, dig in more, whatever you got to do to make this fun.
Yeah. I love it. And be honest with yourself.
Be honest with yourself.
Always.
Ask hard questions. Jason, thanks for joining us today, man. It's been a pleasure talking with you. For everyone, I know we ended on talking about his podcast, but go check that out. It's in the episode description. And it's been a pleasure having you. I learned a lot today, speaking about learning, and I hope our listeners did too. So until next time, guys.
Take care.
See you guys.